Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to another Torah lesson. And once again, we're reviewing last week's Torah portion of the Sidra for last week, which was Mishpateem. First and foremost, giving all glory and respect to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who created us all, the one who has been with us and blessed us, woke us up this morning, and the one that continues to be with Yisrael scattered in the four corners of the earth. Right now, I'm wishing everyone a early Shabbat Shalom, and we will be going over, like I said before, Torah portion Mishpateem, which will be reviewed by Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. He will be highlighting some points. He will be highlighting points in the lesson, and I pray that everyone will give him an attentive ear. Shalom, shalom, Nasik. How are you today?
Not bad, Baruch Hashem. Thankful. And first of all, I'd like to give praise to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov, and due respect to the platform that's on D.C.B channel, Chief Prince Ariel, and the host, Chief Uzal, to the Princess, Chief, Kohanim, Morim, the Rabbim, those and brothers and sisters, greet you all in the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom,
First of all, I also like to say, Adonai Septadi Takufiya Giti Latheaka, O Lord, open down my lips and mouth to declare thy praise. I'll be going over Mishpateem, which means, well, for lack of a better word, sentences of judgments in that order. But before we left off before that with Yithro and with the Decalogue, and this, as we know, when we get ready to get into Mishpateem, it's just a continuation, except that it's not the Creator directly speaking to the whole nation of Israel at this particular point in junction. One of the things, like I spoke on, even though I only spoke on 5 of the Seder Hadibro that was mentioned, the 10 matters that was mentioned in Exodus 20th chapter at the Revelation. But I want us to, bear in mind that some of the things, that's in those 10 matters, you have laws that have a reward for it, such as honoring your parents, your mother and your father and your mother, that the days may be long from the lamb's sword that God giveth thee. You have a law where a judgment is given, where it says, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. So that means that it's a penalty, it's a judgment in that particular law. And then you have one with a reasoning. Remember the Shabbat to keep it holy. For 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in it is, and rested from all this work which he had done. So you get some laws with reasons, some laws with a reward, some laws with a judgment, but all of them don't always come with every law that we might read as we get ready to go into Mishpateem. So I just wanted to point out those different variables, and the last matter in the Decalogue is a thing of thought, covetousness. Covetousness, he said, that's a thought, and you're prohibited to have illicit thoughts. And you say, well, what's the penalty for having an illicit thought? Now, that's open for a lot of discussion. But there are penalties for certain thoughts. That's that's what they call it in English, covetousness. All right. So now, as we get into this particular chapter, and this starts from Exodus the 21st chapter and going to the 24th and 18th verse. But I'm gonna give a what they call a hasikum. Hasikum is a Hebrew word for summary. Hasikum, and I'm gonna give a little summary on the whole sidra. All right, so though I know I won't get through the whole sidra, I'm only going to be in pretty much the first part of it, but I'll just give you an overview. All right, it contains stuff like a variety of civil laws, civil and criminal laws, and treatment of slaves, crimes of murder and kidnapping, and personal injuries, damages through negligence, and stealing, offenses against others through lying, witchcraft, adultery, oppression, unfair business practices, and unjust conduct of the judges. A lot of times, and just to bring a lot of times when people start a group or a nation, they form the group first, and then they say, let's come up with the rules. With us, the Creator said, before we even go into the land and set up as a nation, these are the rules. We had rules even before we left out. Then it goes in even further. Other stuff is covered in this particular portion, such as Israelites are reminded to be sensitive to the needs of the strangers, rules for Shabbat, the sabbatical year, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, those 3 pilgrimage times, which more so have agricultural festivals in this particular section of the book. Don't cook a kid in his mother's milk. Some kind of dietary prohibition that's going in here. And you got a ratification of the covenant. But what's interesting, out of all this here, you got 2 places in this particular situation where it addresses the stranger. And throughout the Torah portion, complete, you have 36 spots where it speaks about a stranger. But what's interesting, when we go into the book of Mishpateem, we talk about rules and judges and judgments, is that how we start in this particular chapter. You can begin on the 21st chapter.
We're in the book of Exodus, chapter 21, starting from
Verse 1.
Verse 1. Hallelujah. And it reads, now these are the ordinances which thou shalt set before them. If thou buy a Hebrew servant 6 years, he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he come in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he be married, then his wife shall go out with him. If
I just want to focus on this here. First thing is that now you figure the last thing we want to deal with is slaves, servants. Man, we did hard time as servants. Usually people don't want to deal with things that they hated when they was in that position. So, and yet this is the first law that's being addressed, after the Asera Hadivero. It's concerned, and then uniquely enough, it's concerning a Hebrew slave, and say you buy one. So he said, wow, and why they don't say Israelite? Why they say Hebrews? When the Creator said, I'm God of the Hebrews, that's because of our condition that we was in, talking to Pharaoh, because Israel himself is on a higher level. When Yaakov went into Syria and Padamaram, he wasn't Israel until after he came back. So he served and worked for a man for 20 years in Padamaram. So here we go on there, we reduce to levels of servants. And they say if you buy one this time, because I want to, this not going to be my main focus for tonight, but a person sold for a step, and they say if he served, he should go out for nothing. All right, now, since when, except in America, a slave paid for his freedom? All right. So here the Creator said, this guy you brought, and he's usually sold into a condition, and you had to maintain him. But while you maintain him, you might have a few sick days, a few productive days, and a few non-productive days. And you can't strike down and say that well, you didn't work hard enough, man. I mean, you took a couple weeks off here, a few weeks off there because you didn't feel good. You caught this, you caught that. You're gonna have to pay me for that lost time. I had to take care of you. And this now the rabbinic law is different because if out of 6 years, if he's sick more than 3 years, then they have a different story. But I'm not going to go into that for those that might go through a rabbinic approach on that. I'm aware of it, but I'm just going to stick with this particular area here for now. And as we go forward, and it says, "It should go out free for nothing." And then third verse.
If he come in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he be married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master give him a wife, she bear him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her masters, and he shall go out by himself.
Okay, now that's a real sensitive subject there in that area there, because reading this and not knowing the culture of the East during slavery in America, they thought this was the way, just go ahead and do things without knowing the culture, knowing the reason that the person's in there, and the master giving you a wife, and for a particular reason. Now, what kind of wife would you be giving them? Would you give them another Israelite sister? You got a Hebrew servant. You brought a Hebrew servant. So you brought you an Israelite from one of them 12 tribes to serve you. So which kind of wife are you actually going to give him? And if he came in with a wife, his wife is not a slave, a servant. She wasn't sold. His children is not servants. But so that means that you would really have to maintain the whole family. So it makes it difficult. Even when you buy him for a step, that you got to make, you got to say, okay, why would I buy a guy that's a thief? That's another question to ask. I'm just throwing these things out. Being he's sold because he can't afford to pay back what he owed. And we know we have laws like that later on that address directly on that issue. So why would I want to buy a thief? But the viewpoint is that he didn't steal from me. He stole from somebody else. So I'm buying off his debt to somebody else. So therefore, he's going to have to serve me. So he haven't stolen from me. So in other words, what our Lord teaches us is that we're not branding a guy because he stole one time that he's a thief all the time. He stole that time. Mm-hmm. But you don't brand him as a thief, perpetual thief. So you ain't no but a thief, you're a thief. Wow, that was a long time ago I stole. Well, you're still a thief. You ain't never changed. Leopard ain't gonna change his spots.
Once a
People
thief,
say stuff like
thief.
that. A leopard haven't changed his spots. Mm-hmm. But our Lord don't look at people like that. You're dealt with the crime you did at the time you did it. That's how we view you. But we're gonna just move along a little bit more because I'm gonna spend a little time on a couple of these verses.
Verse 5. But if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him unto God, and shall bring him to the door, or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his heir through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever.
Okay, hold right there. Now, the forever is just a general. I forget the technical word you use for it, but it's an expression because he works until the year the 50-year jubilee. If he say that, that's what and most people might only see, if they're lucky, 2 jubilees in a lifetime. If they're lucky, 2 jubilees. If you're really, really super good, you'll see 3. So, if I'm born maybe a couple of years before the Jubilee, I don't know it's a Jubilee, but I'm born a few years before the Jubilee. And then I grows up during another Jubilee. Or I might have 10 years, I'll be maybe 10 years old, and then the Jubilee come around. And then I lived to be 61. So now I done made 2 Jubilees, you know. But you know, I mean, but that, you know, but very few people gonna make 3. So you know, in that area. So that's what it mean when it talk about forever. What you'll find in other parts of the scripture to get that elaborate that a little bit more. But what's interesting is that he says he loved his, you know, the first thing he loved his master, then he loved his wife, and then he loved his children. That's a strange order, you know, to love your master, and then your wife, and then your children, and you know, and then he said, "I will not go out free." All right, and then they bring them unto God. Now, and the translation they use Elohim. Now, the difference is we know Elohim is in the plural. When it means judges, the verb that go along with it gonna be in the plural. So those that might be studying the Hebrew text, when you look at it and they say Elohim, but it has a plural verb, that's when it means judges. When they have a singular verb along with Elohim, then that means it's dealing with the deity, the creator. Hence, like in Genesis, singular verb, you know, he created, not they, we, or anybody like that. So just you know, so when we see before God and stuff like that, you know, sometimes they might say literally, you know, before the temple or before the tabernacle, but basically when they use the plural word in this case, it's before the judges, people that can witness this, because you might have scared the individual and say, you're gonna work for me forever, like that. So this is and you better not talk about you want to leave in the 6th year. I didn't get enough work out of you. So he got to plainly say this. And then what's next?
It reads, verse 7, and if a man sell his daughter to be a maid servant.
Excuse me, I'm with you. All right, pick it up from 6 again. I'm sorry.
Verse 6, it reads, then his master shall bring him unto God, and shall bring him to the door, or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever.
All right, I want to more focus on this point here. The master himself cannot designate somebody else to do the job. And you say, well, why a doorpost? Why the ear? You know, and there's a lot of conversation about why the doorpost is, why the ear itself, and the master himself doing this job personally, he can't delegate that particular job to anybody else. And the first time we had a doorpost was when the Creator himself told us in a Passover night in Egypt that when you see the blood upon a doorpost, you know what I mean, then he'll recognize that blood upon the doorpost, and you know what I mean, and we himself, well, you know, he would, you know, pass over us because he see the blood on the doorpost. So the doorpost would be an outward sign that this is where he tied to, and it would be at the doorpost of the master's house. Now, you know, and just any doorpost is at his master's doorpost. And then, you know, what's similar is at the ear, because now you got a Hebrew servant, and the night of the doorpost, you know what I mean, is that, you know what I mean, say, you are my servants. The night of the Passover, say, you were my servants at that night when the Creator was going to pass through the land of Egypt that night. So the same ear that heard that you the servants of the Most High, and also which just right behind the revelation of Mount Sinai, when he said, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You know, so now, therefore, you shall have no other gods before me. So now you want to accept a man, another man, to be your master, when the master of the universe told you firsthand that you was his servant, and he brought you out and told you why you were his servant. So you must have didn't hear it well, but the revelation at Mount Sinai was such a paramount thing that we can never speak on it enough, because it was no one blind, because everybody's seen the thunder and the lightning. I mean, if you can see thunder, your eyesight is super good. Okay, people can see lightning. Even the guy with his eyes shut could see when lights flash, flash by. But when you can see thunder, your eyesight is super good, whatever that revelation was. And you hear the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoker. So no one was deaf. So we didn't have no deaf people at the foot of Mount Sinai. So now that same ear that you heard all that revelation right there, and it's coming right behind the revelation of Mount Sinai, that you would be a servant to another servant of the Most High, when you didn't like being servants in the first place where you were. So therefore, that's why he must be plainly saying it. And that blood is marked on that doorpost, because if you bore your hole in your ear to that doorpost, you got the blood stain on that doorpost. So we have been exactly, we used to say, about the earring culture. This is something we made up. It's nothing, just sidebar, is that we wear an earring in our ear with symbol representing our way of life, either a kai, a lot of us had Morgan at the time, or if they didn't have a kai, saying that we are servants of the Most High and we serving him forever. That was our reason for, in the early years, when it was strange for men to wear earrings, why we wore earrings, and that's the explanation we gave in reference to this particular portion in the scriptures. That was something we made up, but that was our tradition. Now we're going to go in the 7th verse.
Verse 7, and if a man sell his daughter to be a maid servant, she shall not go out as men's servants do. If she please not her master, who have espoused her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed. To sell her unto a foreign people, he shall have no power, seeing he have dealt deceitfully with her.
Okay, hold it right there. Now, if a man sell his daughter, now it sounds real cruel, especially if you don't understand the culture, because usually a man, it's hard for a suitor to convince the father to give his daughter to the suitor. Most of the time, especially when it's decent, if you're a decent father, and and he really loves his daughter, and it's really difficult. So there's a lot of reasons why he might sell his daughter. Perhaps, one of the reasons, he can't pay the debt. She might want to work off the debt. He got caught, whatever it is. So he's trying to get him, but her purpose is not to be a servant, because she's never called the servant in Hebrew. So la'ama, more like a hired specialist. All right. So it's also the same root for like a nursling. Now, this is some areas I'm gonna bring out, just a little bit, just an extreme visual case. But before that, so he sells her to this family, this man, for the purpose of marriage, and usually be kind of young, and he buys her, and but she could be redeemed at any time, because now a lot of times you say, well, did she have any say so? That is a strong debatable question, that a father sells his daughter, because we got to think about the culture of the time. So it's a strong debate on that, and I don't want to focus on that at this particular time, but just to be conscious that today kids divorce their parents. That's something they couldn't do back then, but so we got to think of the culture of the time and say, okay, what about the feeling? But he's selling her for the purpose of marriage because she's never called a servant. And if the guy that buys her, and she could be redeemed at any given time. So that means if she's sold for 6 years and she sold for 24 gold pieces, then if she only did 1 year, that's four gold pieces less the family got to redeem her for. All right, so she could go out any time. Now, but the next portion here is before I even get to that, I want to bring out this here particular perspective. Some people might have had an infant, maybe a year or so, and the mother of the infant had passed on and died. And this woman might be a widow, but she's still young. And the father said, okay, you're a widow, you're young, you had children before, for the guy, the dad, but you're still able to nurse. You still got milk in your breast. Because there wasn't no such thing as going to the formula, getting a formula or Similac and all that back in them days. So you might, hence the other definition for that particular word as a nursling, because how we would have something similar to that is we know Benjamin's mother died at his birth.
Right.
And since his mother died at his birth, somebody had to nurse him.
Right.
Because he ain't eating hard food, at that time. So, and I just threw that example out to understand sometimes why a person might purchase a woman too, in that particular culture. I just brought one extreme out, and using that particular word that's used there. So as a specialist. So, and we know that when Moses was dropped in the Nile, his sister, asked, you want me to find a nursing for him? So he just happened to have his own mother in that case. So when a child, a guy might sell his daughter, maybe to pay off a debt, and hopefully she married into a good family, and for a whole lot of other reasons. But there's no dowry given beyond what he paid for the daughter. That's the difference. Now, let's see what happens if it works in a different area.
Verse 9. And if he espouse her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters.
Uh-huh.
If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, her conjugal rights shall he not diminish.
Okay. Well, the conjugal rights and stuff like that, it's always a debate about what the third word means itself. So, but nevertheless, when she become a wife, and then the guy said, I want another wife besides her, and she was used to living at a certain level because she is sold into the condition, then you got to maintain that level. So if you put the bar very high, then you're going to have to maintain that high bar. That means everything going to have to be on that exact same level. Now, she might say, okay, I know hard times hit. I'm going to give you a play on that. All right. But that's a rough way to have a relationship there, when you set the bar up here and you know how she was gotten. And if she figure, I could go out free for nothing now because you ain't doing this and doing that, one of these three things. So, and this would be also had to be adjudicated by judges.
Right.
It just can't be just her words saying
just
that.
walking out, right?
Right. It had to be, and what's important, and what's interesting, about this, if it's a question about her say so being sold into a situation, it definitely shows that she has some say so about where things go awry in the situation, because her complaint got to reach somebody, and she got able to lodge a complaint. So continue.
Verse 11. And if he do not these three unto her, then shall she go out for nothing without money.
Okay.
12.
I mean, all debts are clear.
Right.
All right. He just got to take that loss. Go ahead, 12th verse.
He that smiteth a man so that he dieth shall surely be put to death.
Uh-huh.
And if a man lie not in wait, but God cause it to come to hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he may flee. And if a man come presumptuous.
All right. I just want to say one thing in reference to that. That means fist fighting amongst Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
It's a no-no.
Right.
You know, because if you're fist fighting, intent is always there.
Right.
Now, you might not intend on killing them, but you intend on disabling him.
Right.
And since you ain't got a good gauge and the person died, then you got a problem.
Right.
You know, you got a serious problem on your hand. Now, if a guy had no, you know, we always use the axe, you know what I mean? But, you know, and that's one thing. I like to focus on the axe more so than modern times with a car hitting you, stuff like that. But, because if it's a person chopping down a tree and they said the axe hammer to go off, all right, and kill an individual, you got a city of refuge to flee through, flee to. If he's chopping a tree down and the axe handle fly out. Now, some of us play baseball. You could swing the bat so hard and miss on a strike, but that bat could swing it out there, you know what I mean, in the field. It could hit somebody. Because guys just lose grip of the bat because they try to swing so hard at the ball that the bat take off. And you could possibly kill somebody like that. The guy could be chopping a tree and you know he's really winding up on a tree. So it just don't be the handle. It could be the whole axe and the whole tool. Now, he could be chopping a tree and don't watch where it's going to fall. So now he done chopped the tree and he thought it was going to fall over here, but some kind of way it teeter-tottered over another way. And then it killed somebody. All right, so then he would flee, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't intentional. It was ignorant of what he was doing. And it's ironic that he still called a murder, even though in English they say a manslaughter, you know, and when it gets to that particular portion of the book. But we can proceed here, what it says.
Verse 14. And if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die.
All right, now, you first, we got one example. Everybody know that one about Joab, you know, being on the altar, you know, because he killed some men in time of peace, you know, some warriors, you know, generals. And when Solomon went to, you know, sent for him, he grabbed hold to the horns of the altar. Right. Now, what is, when you know, I don't like to use that as a major example, simply because, one, how do the priest let the guy go up and grab him, grab the altar? Right. A regular dude. Well, you know, even though people today say you go to a church, you got to silent, you know, but that don't work anymore now in most places. But how do the priests of that time, that brings up another question, allow this guy to go past them and grab hold of something he never supposed to have his hands on? And then we always hear about David and stuff like that, but, you know, but we're talking about this guy, Yoav. But what is another viewpoint is that if it's a priest even working on the altar, so the guy could be a priest, but he's a murdering priest. We read Hanukkah about guys making deals and stuff like that. They had to be to get the priesthood, to buy the priesthood, just try to connive for the priesthood. Even if it's a priest doing his job and he's a murderer you got to say, look, we're going to snatch you right on down now. Because you don't belong up there.
Right.
All right. So that's why, so that's one of the major factors about, even from my altar, saying if a guy have a status of a priest, even you could snatch him down. Because he's not, exonerated for murder. All right. So we're going to move on just a little bit more.
Verse 15, and he that smiteth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death.
All right. That's, not now. This law, they say, rabbinically, was never ever enacted upon and stuff like that. We don't know. But one of the things is that you hear these days in time, especially I was a train operator in New York, you hear young girls talking about their mother say something to them, they'll slap them, whip their behind. You hear guys talking about, my father coming to me talking about, son, I'll knock him out. And they brag and boast about that, and will stand toe to toe with their parents. That disrespect was not ever tolerated amongst Eastern people, in ancient times. That disrespect would never be tolerated, in ancient times amongst the majority of the Eastern people of that time, whether it's Israelites or not Israelites. But because if you stand toe to toe with your mother or your father, that means that you are disrespecting even the Creator. You don't have no regards for God in that sense. I know, unfortunately, I heard a brother talking about that, he said it proudly, like he beat his father up one time when he was talking trash. He said it proudly. And I said, and it astounded me that the brother felt proud that, he beat his father up. His father drinking. So maybe you got the edge on him that time. But you should never feel proud about that because you come from that individual.
Right.
All right. But this is a serious case here. And respect the parents these days is that's why you have so many talk shows today about tell Phil and all this here kind of stuff about parent household problems. All right. We're gonna go a little bit further.
And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death.
Okay. All right. That means, you kidnap him or you didn't get a chance to sell him. Or get a chance to, you restrained him against his will.
Right.
With intent. All right. That make a lot of people that grab us up a problem for them in our law. But we're going to move on. 17.
Verse 17. And he that curseth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death.
Okay. All right. And now when we talk about curse, we don't mean that vulgarity, that vulgarity, as I say, people always say, excuse my French.
4-letter words.
But it's a curse would be more like, and the sages even put it even stronger, that I hope that tomorrow when you step out the door, you drop dead. And you're talking to your parent, your mother or your father about that. And the sages, and you invoke the name of the Creator on top of that. A lot of people say, I swear to God. These days they say, I swear to mother. I swear on my mama. What I mean? They never swear on their father. I don't know. Maybe he ain't good enough. But anyway, so I swear on my mama.
I saw on everything I love.
Yeah. That's what they say. So those type of things there, and when you one thing, you're taking the Creator's name in vain, and two, you're gonna try to curse your parents with a thing and say, I hope you die. I hope this happened to you. I hope that happened to you. All right. These are death penalties, but the drama is that we read later on, and I'm just going to go off topic just a slight bit and try to relate this, is that if you have a son, have a son that's a glutton and a drunkard, then the mother and the father got to take hold of him and bring him before the judges. I mean, both of y'all got to be in agreement about this situation.
Right.
And the judge got to examine that
Right.
to see if he's really the problem or y'all the problem. So it's not just, straight like the child's always wrong right away. But if he curse him, then it's still going to be an examination. What did he say? He said it which way? When? Where's your witnesses for that? So it's going to have to be a serious thing because these going to be death penalties here. All right.
18. And if men contend and one smite the other with a stone or with his fist, and he die, but he die not, but keep his bed, if he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, then he that smote him shall be then shall he that smote him be quit. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed.
Quit, we call it today acquitted. You know what I mean? So that when we say quit, that means acquitted of the serious charge of death penalty. Right. Because this guy ain't dead now.
Right.
You meant to hurt him. You meant to disable him. Whatever the argument was. That's why it's not good to get into a heated argument where you had to go physical with brothers. And so now you praying for the guy you want to disable, the guy you want to beat down to a pulp. You praying, please live, because now you fear for your life. And then your life might be predicated on your family. It might be the breadwinner. So now he could be the breadwinner. Now, and it says, only shall pay for the loss of his time and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. Now, he can't go to work. How long? We're going to have some judges checking it out. That's for sure. We're going to have some judges to check this thing out. But how much he was making daily? We're going to have some judges check that out. Because, he might have had I'll just bring it up to modern times. He might have had an $8 an hour job, and now all of a sudden he said, I make $15 an hour, man. That's why I know to make it. Yeah. He making $8 before he had to fight, but now he making $15 an hour.
Right.
So, and then the seriousness of it is that he don't have to accept your doctor to heal him. Because if we think rational, you say, why would I want to deal with your doctor when you the guy to try to hurt me and put me in this condition in the first place? I want to choose my own doctor. So he might choose one of them high-end doctors in the neighborhood. And you will have to pay all that. And hence, you could be indebted. Hence, you could also wind up selling yourself into servitude because you done got so in debt with this guy that you done heard of. And you need somebody to bail you out. And you want him to live. You don't want him to die. And you don't want him to be disabled too long. So this creates problems, but this teaches people to be more civilized in society. All right. Right. Let's pick it up from the 20. Where we at? The 20.
20. And if a man smite his bondman or his bondwoman with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his money.
Now you notice that means that this is not a Hebrew. This is not a Hebrew servant.
Right.
Because because at the beginning of the chapter, talk about a Hebrew servant. You buy a Hebrew servant, a Hebrew slave. The word slave is for both, both. But the difference is this one, the one in the beginning of the chapter is a Hebrew, whereas this guy could be a Canaanite, could be an Egyptian, could be anybody else other than a Hebrew. Then it says, when you smite him that he died, you're gonna be punished. They didn't say you killed him. They ain't gonna do execute capital punishment on you. But if they go a day or two, and you say, well, all right, so he died 2 days later, 3 days later. But why they say it's his money, because he gonna do everything he can to save that guy. Talk about Dr. Savior. He gonna do everything to save this guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So he escaped that serious punishment, because we don't know how deep the punishment gonna go. This is one of them sliding scales of punishment. So we don't know how deep the punishment will really go in certain cases. Now, rabbinically, they have certain, measuring standards, but I'm not saying according to scriptures here. All right. So now, when we go into the next one, and this one I'm gonna focus on the most, and this I think should be something that be discussed in the various congregations, even more in depth, male and female. So when we get into this particular, and this way I'm gonna finish at in this particular portion here, pretty much.
Verse 22. And if men strive together and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart, and yet no harm follow, he shall be surely fined, according as the woman's husband shall lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine.
All right, let's stop right there just for a moment. All right. Now, what is interesting is that men is fighting. All right. Maybe the husband fighting in the fight too. We don't know. It could be the husband fighting the guy, or a brother fighting the guy, or just two men fighting in general. So there's a lot of different scenarios could come into this mix right now. But here's a woman that's pregnant. So now, when men fight, you tussling and stuff like that, you hitting the guy, you getting a lock, and you might roll all over the place. That's why people say that, no fighting in my house, because you're gonna tear up the furniture. But so now it didn't say she got involved in the fight. She got hurt. Now, if her husband is fighting and she got involved, she still got hurt. So I'm not gonna make it too complicated, because it could be, that it could have been a husband fighting.
Yeah, it could go different ways.
And he ain't doing too well.
Right.
You know what I mean? And she had this baby, and she try to save the father of her child, and help him out. Or it could be her brother, and she the older sister, and she been used to looking out for her brother. Or it could be two individual strange men that's not even related. Okay. Now, what is more, and it said the fruit depart. Now, some brothers think she had early birth. Early birth is not an issue here. Because the way it's used was framed in Hebrew. The fruit means that she had a miscarriage, period, not an early birth. Early birth is not an issue, because early birth could be any time. Some people, have a 6 month, 7 month, and don't go the whole 9 months. So the fruit, and talking about the fruit depart, the child, that means she was no longer in birth, right? Not coming early. And it says that
and yet no harm
and a
follow.
fine, before fine, according, if fine, according as the woman's husband shall lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. So now, do she get a say so in this? She got the child. She's pregnant. But they don't say she got to say so in this situation. It didn't even say they consider her any more than that she had the child. Now, what's even more interesting is that the fine is the penalty is payment, not death. So what's interesting, the Torah, today we would say that's an early abortion. And that's why I said this is going to be a real, sticky issue here. That's why, it'd be interesting conversation for people to revisit this here in the various different congregations and discuss this in depth, which I won't really do much justice to it over the in this talk here. But one of the things that she's not asked what she feels about the situation. The child, the embryo is not treated like a 1 year old or a child that's already born, a month-old baby. Had it been a month-old baby, it's clearly a death penalty. The child. So now, how they view it according to scriptures, and also it's a big debate even amongst rabbinic traditions too as well. But I'm gonna deal with it according to scriptures. I'm just going to deal with here because everybody's not don't hold to rabbinic tradition. Is that the embryo of this child, as long as it's still in the woman, is not a separate entity. It's part of her, just like your finger is part of your hand. It's like your hand is part of your arm. So if you got an arm jammed up or a leg jammed up, that's part of you. It's only once the navel cord is severed and the embryo now is starting to breathe on its own, then it's a full life-giving thing. Now, sticky matter, because we don't have no Roe versus Wade here. And when we deal with Torah, since we don't have no Roe versus Wade, Torah is not even based on pre-existing cases. There's nowhere in the Torah that we have a pre-existing case that we use that, because that's wrong for the judge to do that. The judge must try each case individually, independently of whatever case happened similar to that in the past. He can't say, well, just like so-and-so, Roe versus Wade, then this is a precedence. Torah doesn't work like that, that this takes a precedence. Each case is individual. So now the husband might want an exorbitant amount. And the judges will say, look, this is justice right here, which you could pay for, because of the child and wherever she at. And there's a lot of other factors could come in, but you notice it's never an amount given, but it's a fine, it's a monetary fine. The husband got the first say so, and the judges determine was the husband even trying to think just in this matter. And so now the next little portion of here is really another area that I'd like to talk on somewhat.
Read 23. It says, Slika.
Yeah.
But if any harm follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe.
All right. Ain to cut ain, shane to cut shane underneath, something to sunder. What we call this here in ancient times is during the Latin term. Well, it's from the Latin term, I think. It's if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's lex talionis, which is the law of talents. The claw, and the law of the claw, the talents, talionis. Now, what is interesting here is that it doesn't mean except for when you get to the life for life. That means life for life, because murder is already, came from the Decalogue directly. So that's life for life. And we've seen examples of that too. But, with intention. But if it comes to tooth for tooth, then you say, okay, or eye for eye. Then how can we make that just? You knock one guy eye out, the other guy only got one eye. And so you blind him and you can still see. That's one area. I just throw that out. The next area, they don't take it as eye for eye, but compensation, because and there's other verses in scriptures that we notice. It just an example of talking about fairness or balance. Your eye may be bigger than my eye. So you knock out a little eye And now I got to knock out a bigger eye. So the value is still not the same. If you're talking about even-handed justice, your hand may be bigger than my hand. Your leg is bigger than my leg. So now I lose my leg and your leg bigger than my leg, then that won't be equal because you're bigger than me. So I would say, give me your leg because my leg is gone. Now, even further, let's take it to another tangent. Your hand, you might be an artist. Me, myself, I might be a woodcutter. So now, your hands is more valuable as an artist than mine as a woodcutter in some circles. So your living, it still won't be equivocal in that sense because I'm an artist and you're a woodcutter. You know, so I got to draw with these hands. Or I might be a musical instrument player and I make my living playing music. And you don't do that with your hands. All you do is grind meal with your hands. So therefore, it's not even in that area because your hands is for one particular purpose, mine's for another purpose. When we look at talk about two for two, you know, I mean, burning for burning, we could go on with that, you know, when it comes to that because it's like, what is the guy's profession? How much is he going to lose from not having this hand or this eye or, you know, or this leg? Because he could have been a guy that, oh, what'd he do? He sit around and drank all day, but he lost his leg. So-and-so caused him to lose his leg. Now, what does this other guy do? Well, you know what I mean? He's a runner. You know what I mean? He run and deliver messages across the neighborhood. That's what he do. You know, and he run and plow fields for people and stuff like that. So now that's not equal in that sense. And so we got a law when it says, but for the blood of every beast, man's blood is required. Mm-hmm. That means that we shouldn't eat meat because it said for the blood of every beast, man's blood is required. So it always was understood. Now, mind you, ancient cultures took this literal. Hammurabi Code took this literal. You know, a hand for a hand. And yet, this guy don't work with his hands. But a hand for a hand. This other guy needed his hands. So that's why I said compensation. They got to assess it and see what the value of this individual's worth. And then we even have a similar case that we don't pay much attention to. The valuation of ages, when you talk about the values of an individual, for you know, when they bring up for 20 years old, up to 60, they got a certain amount of shekels they're worth. And then a value for, you know, I mean, as you get 60, all those guys that been 60 and better, you know, our value for a field hand start to drop. So now, and my value as a field hand start to drop, then everything else drops in value compared to a guy that haven't reached that stage. All right. So that's what this law really focuses on. It talks about whatever is fair and just, you know, and righteous in the eyes of the Most High. The judges must determine that as well. All right. I just want to just talk about some other stuff. We ain't got to read anymore. But in the as we get to the there's two things I want to bring out because I know I'm gonna get a chance to get to that. One of the things about seething the kid in his mother's milk. That's a dietary law that tends to be used a lot in what they call kashrut. And in kashrut, it's just a term they use for, you know, how you're supposed to eat, you know, consented eating. From kasher means to be consented more so. And we just, you know, when we say kosher, it's more like the Yiddish pronunciation. But when we talk about seething the kids in mother's milk, it's a cruel thing to do that. That's number one. But why would people boil animal period in milk? You know, it's because as nomadic people, everybody need water, but everybody don't need milk. So therefore, you will substitute milk more so to cook food. Not just only because the Canaanites might have used it part of their ritual, and they would, boil a kid in his mother's milk, which is cruel and everything like that. Because we can't even take a animal from its mother to at least 7 days old. So therefore, what it is that we know that we all need water, but we all don't need milk. And therefore, if you're a nomadic people, you will cook with milk more so than you would with water, especially if water is scarce. Um, Traditionally, rabbinically, since it's mentioned only 3 times in the scriptures, they would say that you're not supposed to rob benefit from it. You're not supposed to, even cook it with it like that. And and then they say, well, you don't eat meat and dairy together. So rabbinically, for those that follow that particular thing, if you eat dairy first, give a moment. And you notice I said a moment, not no specified minutes, even though some people say minutes, and then you can eat some meat right behind it. But if you eat meat first, the the most lenient area of some societies in ancient time, was 1 hour, but most times it'd be 4 hours to 6 hours before you could eat any dairy product. That's the normal window time they deal with from 4 to 6 hours. Still in the same stomach, but that's just those that follow that particular tradition. It's just like some people don't eat the hind part of an animal, a custom they come up with. But and the last thing I want to bring out is that on the 24th chapter, I don't want to focus on about the elders seeing the glory of the Creator. I want to focus on that one verse, 24/7, and that's why I can remember it so well, because that became an expression 24/7 when it said Nishma, I say Nishma, no, when Nishma, yeah. No, 24/7 was when people say, I say when Nishma.
Exodus 24/7. You saying?
No, you got to read it. You got to read it.
Okay.
Then you got to read it now. I'm just going to bring a conclusion to that. That we say we will hear. We will do and then hear. We will do and hear. Yeah. That's the only place in scriptures. The only place in scriptures that we ever say we will do and hear. You don't find it. All the other parts of scriptures, we said it in reverse. The normal way of saying things. All right. We will hear and do.
But asher diber Yahovah, now I say Nishma.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's 24/7. So those you never forget that verse. Never forget where that's at in scriptures, because of the term 24/7. And that's the only time in scriptures where actually that we say that we're going to go ahead on, and we telling Moses this, and Moses is going to bring this back up on the mountain, and this when Moses began to go up on the mountain for the 40 days and 40 nights while we supposed to be waiting for him. So we enthused. You had the elders that had to see the glory of God. You had the nobles as well. Then they eat and everything like that, and the Creator didn't slay them. That's another matter, but I don't even focus on that at that particular time at this revelation. But I hope you got something out of what I said. I know I went kind of swift through it a little bit, but any mistakes been my own, and a lot of discussion. One of the things I say, if you're going to discuss, is Torah doesn't, nowhere in the Torah it supports abortion now. So I don't want people to look at this here and say it support abortion. And there's no advocation, even rabbinically, about abortion. Now, how soon the child is considered a living being? Because when it's in his mother, it's just an extension of his mother. So how soon is that? That's another debate, even amongst rabbinic people in that area. So, so discussion about, but as one thing they say, and I would throw this one out. If the woman's life is in danger of having that child, that woman's life, she's viable. All right? The child is not. But most I know come from the school where I'm coming from. Most brothers say, look here, get the child. She had her time. But it's not about, we putting a value on life. The Creator set a precedence about the value of life right here. So with that, I hope you got something out of what I said. And like I said, statement has been my own. And y'all have a, I'm gonna say Shalom Aleichem and early Shabbat to all those.